My name is Amelia, and I never imagined that one simple knock on my front door would open a new chapter in my life. It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon, the kind of day where the minutes stretch slowly and the silence feels heavier than usual. I had been sitting near the window with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the drizzle slide down the glass. I often found myself counting raindrops, a small habit I had developed after my husband passed away 5 years ago. The quiet of the house was no longer comforting, it was haunting. Then came that knock. Sharp, unexpected. It made me jump, spilling a few drops of tea onto my lap. I opened the door and found myself face to face with a young man. He wore a delivery uniform, his cap slightly tilted, and in his hands was a cardboard box. But it wasn't the package that caught me off guard, it was his smile. Warm, genuine, and filled with a kind of unspoken kindness. "Delivery for Amelia," he said, his voice rich yet boyish. I nodded, taking the box from him, though my hands trembled slightly. He noticed, because his gaze lingered for just a second longer than expected. "Are you all right, ma'am?" he asked politely. I assured him I was fine and thanked him. Something in me wanted to hold on to that moment, to not let the silence swallow me again as soon as the door closed. So, without thinking too much, I asked, "Would you like a glass of water before you go?" His hesitation lasted only a heartbeat. Then he smiled again. "Sure, that would be nice. Thank you." And just like that, Daniel stepped into my home. At first, it was only small talk. He told me he had just moved to the city, that he was 25, and that the job was demanding but paid his rent. His laughter was unrestrained, his words sprinkled with hope despite the exhaustion in his eyes. He carried a lightness, the kind that could chase shadows away without even realizing it. I hadn't spoken to someone so freely in a long time. Our 10-minute chat left me with a strange warmth in my chest, a spark I couldn't quite name. After that day, he became a familiar face. Sometimes he delivered groceries, sometimes packages. Each time, I found myself waiting for that knock, waiting for his smile. One late afternoon, as he handed me another parcel, I said, "Daniel, do you ever get tired of carrying other people's lives in boxes?" He laughed, a sound so pure it made my heart flutter. "Sometimes. But then again, every box has a story. And sometimes, people like you make it worth it." I blushed, something I hadn't done in decades. Weeks passed, and his visits became longer. He began lingering for tea, sometimes sharing a sandwich if he hadn't had lunch. Slowly, he stopped feeling like a delivery man and started feeling like a friend. One evening, it rained heavily. When I opened the door, Daniel was drenched, shivering with a sheepish grin. "I'm sorry, I should have worn a jacket." I pulled him inside, scolding him gently like a mother might. "You'll catch your death in this weather. Sit by the fire. I'll get you a towel." He obeyed, grateful, his eyes soft as they followed me around the room. When I handed him the towel, our fingers brushed, and something stirred deep inside me. A connection I couldn't explain. That night, he stayed for hours. We talked about everything. His childhood dreams, my memories of raising children, the loneliness that sat between us both. At one point, the firelight reflected in his eyes, and I realized I was seeing him differently. Not just as a young man, but as a soul reaching for connection, just like me. Our bond grew. Slowly, gently, like the unfurling of petals after a long winter. Daniel began stopping by even without deliveries. He'd bring flowers, sometimes daisies from a roadside stand. He'd sit in my garden, helping me prune roses, his laughter mixing with the chirping of birds. "Why do you always smile when you're here?" I asked him once. He looked at me, his expression earnest. "Because this feels like home, and I haven't felt that in a long time." His words struck me deeply. 4 years, my house had felt like an empty shell. Yet in his presence, it filled with warmth. There were moments of doubt. I often caught myself staring at the lines on my face in the mirror, the silver in my hair, and wondering what he could possibly see in me. I feared what the world would think, what my children would say if they knew. But every time those fears arose, Daniel would disarm them. Sometimes with words, sometimes with gestures. Once, he found me lost in thought, staring out the window. "You're beautiful when you think," he said softly. I laughed, shaking my head. Beautiful isn't a word people use for women my age. He leaned closer, his voice firm. then people don't know what real beauty is. My heart raced, tears prickling my eyes. No one had said something like that to me in years. Our love unfolded in the quiet spaces of life. Cooking dinner together, sharing stories, listening to music. He'd sit on the floor, strumming an old guitar, while I hummed along. We didn't need grand gestures. The simplicity of togetherness was enough. And yet, there were sparks. Small touches that lingered longer than they should. His hand brushing mine when he passed me a cup. The way his gaze would soften when I smiled. Each moment built a bridge of unspoken emotions. One evening, under a canopy of stars in my garden, Daniel turned to me. "Amelia, do you ever regret letting me in that first day?" I smiled, my voice trembling. "No. That knock changed my life." He reached for my hand, holding it firmly. "Mine too. Now, as I look back, I see it all clearly. Love came to me when I least expected it, wrapped not in roses or grand declarations, but in kindness and patience. Daniel reminded me that love doesn't fade with age, that the heart, no matter how weathered, still yearns to be seen, understood, cherished. And so, I ask you this. If love knocked on your door tomorrow, would you have the courage to open it?